Graphics, an aspect of video games that is often thrown to the front line as the primary marketing tool. Look at this, look at that. How does that look so real? You know the exact games I'm talking about and exactly the companies that wield them. And it's no shock that this has been ingrained in the very DNA of the industry, the chase for realism. Since games were games, it's been a never-ending hunt to look exactly like what you would see outside of your window or on the big screen. Cursed by the pursuit of being taken seriously, like cinema, we've seen countless phases of realism come and go, more often than not being left as time capsules, and regularly being humorous, laughing at squared off faces, to globs of colour and shapes, to the uncanny valley of today. Realism has been the goal for many, by the many. So allow me to take you back to years gone by. Nintendo, a company whose games were never centered around the idea of realism, maintaining a sense of style for each of their respective franchises, with one of the most popular being The Legend of Zelda. After the N64 era of Zelda pushed the series into full 3D, the thought of what could come next was, well, tantalizing. Perhaps we'd see another step into higher visual fidelity, a realistic looking Zelda game? After all, the GameCube was Nintendo's latest console, competing in a world of Sony's juggernaut PS2 and the Halo-fueled Xbox. Surely this was Nintendo's time to step it up. But what we got was Wind Waker, not even close to realistic looking. In fact, entirely the opposite. It's funny to think now that the stunning visuals of Wind Waker were, at one time, not universally loved, but that moment in time existed. Beautifully relived in Mega 64's short-running Flame War Theatre series, the reaction to Wind Waker's reveal was intense and not really that positive. It is worth remembering that this was during a console arms race for each system proving how powerful their hardware could be, and the default way to do that is by chasing realism. And of course, things weren't helped by the sheer intensity of the console wars at the time. Despite all of this, a few years after its release, Wind Waker established itself as a modern classic. Visuals and all. Realistic visuals are only ever relevant to the time in which a game was released, while a strong art style can allow a game to look timeless, right? Limitations of hardware of the time play just as much of a role in the game's look as a distinct and ideal visual style. It's the reason why so many PlayStation 1 era games that were gunning for realism have become retrospectively their own style, a style that is, funnily enough, being replicated by developers of today. Silent Hill famously uses mist in order to hide the limitations of the hardware, something that came to define the game's look. I mean, hell, the entire boomer shooter genre is an example of this in various degrees. So where does that leave us? There's snapshots of time that I would suggest we base our judgments on. For me, as someone who's just about to turn 35, I see the 360 PS3 era as the true push towards realism that left a lot of games looking somewhat flavorless. The grey, muted tones that sometimes tied into blues to create a gritty look, or the straight up piss yellow and brown that became very popular at one point in time. This style even became somewhat of a joke, often lampooned or mocked. But even now, this style has become an aesthetic, a piece of nostalgia that harkens back to ye old days, and guess what? It's somewhat being replicated today. It's an endless loop in which realistic looking visuals, at least for now, will inherently have a style, even if it isn't as broad as, say, cel-shaded or purposely retro. It's the only reminder that time goes on and art now becomes other people's back then quicker than we like to admit. So what was the point of this video? Well, frankly, I'm not entirely sure, but it's certainly amusing over the clamour for realistic visuals that always ends up being simply another look, an aesthetic, rarely a celebrated art style, at least mostly. But rarely will those realistic visuals ever be reflected upon as realistic, and instead become a sign of the times, a time capsule in itself, and, as said before, a visual style. Ultimately, realistic graphics don't really matter, but will continue to be the primary selling point of any piece of hardware in any game sell out to the mainstream. After all, how are you going to justify that £600 purchase for a new console if I can't see the hair strands in a character's head?